Freedom Friday starts now.
Hey everybody, welcome. It's great to see everybody here and all across the country. Welcome to Freedom Friday. And let me tell you our purpose for this broadcast, our purpose for getting together today. Okay, there's a few. Number one is I want to take some time and dispel the myth that you have to choose between building and being good at securities. Okay, I believe that's a myth. I don't think that that's true, and we'll talk about that. Secondly, I want to prove that the Primerica business model is superior and that we have a distinct edge in the securities marketplace. Thirdly, what we want to do is equip our reps with the skills to have the conversation at the kitchen table with their clients regardless of the size of the transaction. We want our reps to be confident, to be able to do all different types of transactions, especially the six-figure ones. This training that we're going to go through will be great for you if you just want to boost your personal numbers. Even between now and the end of the year, even immediately, you should be able to leave here and go out and increase your personal numbers. But this is also for those of you that want to build. And if you're a leader and you want to be able to have a duplicatable, simple way to teach your folks how to do the securities business. It's also to build an inherent culture of saving and investing for our reps and our clients. We want to do the full job for everybody, but we want to do that for ourselves as well. We want to understand investing and handle our own money the right way. And lastly, our last purpose of getting together today is to give you a preview of what's coming. Let me tell you what's coming soon. There is an incredible team of talented people here at Home Office working on a project along with great field leaders from around the country. And what we're doing is we're putting together what's called the Complete Builder's Guide to Securities, so that it's going to have everything you need to know about the securities business. So a brand newly licensed representative could have access to this DVD series and a manual that we're going to put together and learn everything. And you can use it the way you see fit in your base shops for training. It's going to be in a modular form, so we'll have modules on all the different aspects of securities, and the theme is central throughout the whole thing. It's to make it simple and duplicatable, but professional, and enable us to get good at providing an incredible value to the client. So a few thoughts as we begin. I don't think that it's a case where we only can do both, meaning building and securities. I think it's a case where we have to do both. See, when I got started in the business in 1999, I went full-time as a district. And I lived in upstate New York, and we had different compensation at that point. Our life compensation was a bit different. And for me to go full-time with a wife at home on maternity leave and a brand new baby, our first child, I had to maximize my time at the kitchen table. So I was forced, in a sense, to get good at securities, to be able to do that and not leave that business on the table. And so I think the same holds true today. We've gone through a transition. Our debt plans for folks have changed. And so because of that, thank God we're good at the securities business, because that shored up our income. All right, it's very important. And here's what that's developed into today. We have an organization now with five first-generation RVPs and a couple second generations. And that effort early on, when I started getting good at securities as a district 14 years ago now, has turned into about $140 million in assets under management right now, and a volume of between $2 and $2.5 million a month that comes in, and we've got over 12,000 accounts that we've set up for clients, mostly where we live in upstate New York. So getting good pays off, and I always felt like this. I owed it to the people that I sat with to be good. I owed it to my family, because if I was going to leave them and be out at the kitchen table and be away from them in the evenings or whatever, I owed it to my family to be good, to maximize that time. But I also had a strong sense of responsibility to the folks that I was sitting with. This company was built on buy term, invest the difference. So if I only know how to do the buy term part, I'm really letting the folks down that I'm sitting with. And so I feel a strong sense of responsibility to America's middle class that we sit with and help. Okay, it's very important, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes. I'll tell you a couple stories. But here's a few assumptions before I really start to get into it, and I want to share these with you. I'm assuming that you can get to the kitchen table. All right, as we go through this, I'm basing this on a major assumption that you can get yourself to the kitchen table. Now, over the years, I know how I've got myself to the kitchen table, and there's really three ways that I know. Number one, the best way. Recruiting someone who wants to do our business, wants to give it a shot, and field training them in their warm market. That is the number one most effective and efficient way, in my opinion, to get to the kitchen table. The majority of our securities business over the years has come from that. Secondly, financial wellness workshops. There's an entire program on POL that if you go to the Download Center and click on Financial Wellness Workshops, we'll show you A to Z how you can position yourself to go into a company or an organization where you live and do a professional workshop and offer the folks there education, first and foremost, and then the opportunity to sit with you and have an F&A. So that is another way to get to the kitchen table that over the years we've used, and it's been very, very effective. And then thirdly would be referrals, which comes from those first two ways that I mentioned. You may know another way to get to the kitchen table, but I don't. Those are the ways that I've used, and I'm assuming that you're going to have that going on for yourself, all right, to make use of what I'm going to share with you today. Second assumption is that you're licensed to have these discussions I'm going to talk about. Okay, you've got to be securities licensed to be able to implement what we're going to go over. Third assumption is that you're going to practice this because you're serious about Primerica. You're serious about providing a high level of service to the people that need it so much. Is that a safe assumption? Okay. And then lastly, I'm assuming you know that what I'm showing you today is one approach to securities. It's what's worked for us, so I can teach it. I can talk about it with conviction because it's worked for us big time. You know, last year we did about 25 million in the hierarchy, and I did about 900,000. So I know this works, and I know it's duplicatable because it's what the folks in our organization are doing, and it's not just me doing it. Does that make sense? This year we should do about 30 million or so, and I'll do a couple. So I want you to know that I respect the great field leaders across the country that have a way of doing things. This is just another way. It's the way we've used. So I'm assuming that you know that, and that you also have the respect for anything that's out there that other leaders have put their time and effort into creating. There's a lot of great resources. This is not the only way that we can do it. Okay? But that being said, I want to jump into it now. Why do securities matter? Insurance and debt solutions are temporary, but investments are permanent. Financial independence can only be reached through investing. Yes, it's incredibly important to lay the foundation of our financial house with term life insurance. But that's not really what helps people get financially independent. It protects them. And it's incredibly important to have a written plan to control and eliminate debt and have a plan to get out of debt. But again, that's only a step in the right direction. What we need is savings and investments to become financially independent. Would you agree? Yes. Secondly, residual income is critical to our freedom. There's a couple ways to get residual income working for ourselves in our great business. One is assets under management. And that's when people invest and we get paid residually on the work we do. I'm getting paid today, guys, for work that I did 14 years ago. Now, if I had stayed at the job that I had, that would not be the case. Okay? Another way to get residual income in our great business is by having reps under management. People that we've recruited and trained and provided an environment, and they become independent and they can go out and do the business without us. And that's another incredible source of residual income. But think about this. What about reps under management that create assets under management? Now we can get there twice as fast. See, I was always interested in that. And another reason why I think securities matter so much is that I believe it makes us more referable as a professional. And not to take anything away from what we do with term life insurance, but just my own opinion, I would much rather get referred to someone as the investment guy instead of the insurance guy. And I've found over the years that I've gotten some very, very strong referrals because I knew what I was doing at the kitchen table with investments. And when I got to the person's house that I was referred to, it was a pretty simple process to help them as well because they wanted me there. Okay? I want you guys to think about this. This is so important. I want you to write this down. Competitors have no edge over us. Never, ever feel inferior to anyone in the financial services industry. We have superior integrity. Would you agree? Yes. As a company, and certainly as individuals, that's our own choice. But we should make sure, that's a decision we can make, we should make sure that we have superior integrity over anybody else that we sit with, or that we would compete against out there. Now, I'm not saying that everybody's a crook. I'm not saying that at all. But I have seen some crazy things over the years. It's a big deal out there right now. This is really important to understand investments and be able to help people. See, Main Street and middle-class America resents Wall Street right now. But they still need to invest. Whether they like Wall Street or not, the fact remains that they still need to invest. That's where we come in. They don't have to deal with somebody that they resent. You know, I sat with a family a few years back, two extremely intelligent people. The wife was head of IT for a large company that had 3,000 employees in my area, a technology-based company. Head of all of the IT. So she was way smarter than me. Her husband was also a software engineer, had his own business, worked from home. So they had great income, great family, very intelligent. And I did a workshop for the company. And she said, we'd like to talk with you. So I went and sat down. And early on in the appointment when I was talking with them, they took a binder and put it in front of me and said, will you explain this to us? And I looked at it, and it was a proposal, a very fancy proposal to help them fund their kids' education. They had 3 kids that were in junior high at that time, and they were planning ahead, looking at, okay, college is coming. And they said, we went to a seminar, and this is what it was about, on how we can fund our kids' education, and we don't really understand it. And I looked at that proposal, and within minutes, I knew what I was looking at. Now, I'm not saying that to say, hey, look how smart I am. I'm saying that to tell you, in Primerica, we can get one heck of an education. We're equipped to be able to help people. Now, here's what the proposal was. It was take all the equity out of your home, which was almost paid for, borrow that out, take a loan from this company, and with the same organization, turn around and put all of it into a universal life policy, 6 figures, and then let that grow in this universal life policy, tax-free was what they were told. And then when it's time for education, borrow the money out. When it's time to pay for the education, borrow the money out and pay for the college. Look, I was in Primerica for 15 minutes, and I knew that that was a horrible proposal. Can you imagine the commissions that would have been generated for whoever was putting that together? So what I was able to do is cut them off at the pass, intervene, and help that family because of our unbelievable system that we have here, and make some recommendations that were far more suitable. Of course, the first thing I told them was, don't you dare take the equity out of your home. Keep paying your home off. Be paid off soon. You don't ever have to touch that. As it turned out, I replaced some whole life policies, saved him $400 a month, took that $400 and added a few hundred more and started a $700 a month pack into a conservative tax-free portfolio to save for college education. And it worked beautifully, and they're still my clients to this day. You know, another thing I think about is I sat with another family, and they actually called a financial services company, a big insurance company that provides financial services, and said that they wanted retirement plans. They wanted Roth IRAs. And when I sat with them, they ended up with 2 whole life policies. And the agent said it's the same thing. Wow. It's the same thing. It's going to grow. It's tax-free. It's the same exact thing, except this is even better. See, this is why we have to be good. I was able to undo that in a matter of minutes. And I specifically asked for that agent to come and sit with us. And he wouldn't. He wouldn't. Here's another key point, guys. We have a superior business model. So if you take superior integrity and you combine it with a superior business model, there is no stopping us. I think we just have to be a bit more aware of this. See, whenever a company cannot do transactions under a certain amount and be profitable, that's inferior to us. We are superior because we can do transactions from $50 a month to multi-millions. The key is just knowing what to do. It's very important. I think of the fact that when I first got my license, okay, the first year, so I got my license at the end of 1999, and in the next 12 months, I was so excited about this, I did $2.9 million in personal production, which is respectable. It's not the most anybody's ever done, but it was a good start. And here's the most amazing thing about that. Of all the $2.9 million, there was only one 6-figure transaction. And it was $154,000. So my point is, what if I was only able to do transactions over $250 when I got started? I wouldn't have done $2.9 million. I would have done 0 because it wasn't the client base that I had access to. But I was doing a whole bunch of 10,000 here, 15,000 here, 50,000 there, 5,000 getting Roth IRAs set up. I was teaching people how to start investing, and I was happy to do that. So I think that makes our model superior. Would you agree? Yes. Don't underestimate the smaller transactions. They are very, very important. Another thing we cannot underestimate, guys, is the power of PACs. Very few clients that I've ever sat with that had investments with another company before I sat with them had a monthly contribution going in automatically. Very few. Do you realize that $1,000 a month in PACs is the same annual compensation as $250,000 in assets under management? Let me say that again. If you set up $1,000 a month in PACs, it's the same annual compensation going forward as $250,000 in AUM. So for all the new folks out there, just getting started, just getting their license, let me ask you this. You're just getting your feet wet. Could you go out and help 4 people invest $250 a month right away? Oh, I think you could. I think you could do it in the next 2 weeks. That's easier to get started that way than trying to get your brain maybe around going out and doing $250,000. All right? But they pay you the same going forward, especially if you're a regional leader and you get trails. But think about this. PACs are so powerful, it doesn't matter what level you're at, you get paid on them. Here's another key important thing about PACs. Let's say I go and sit down with somebody and I teach them how to begin investing. And they get excited. And they do $50 a month, the minimum that we can do. Which, by the way, just so you know, I'll do that all day for people. I feel they deserve it, they need it, I'll meet that need, I have no problem doing that. So they're doing their $50 a month. Now they go to work, and somebody at work is talking about, hey, I'm going to be retiring soon. I got to do this rollover, or hey, I'm getting a lawsuit, I'm getting a settlement, I get an inheritance, whatever. They're talking. The person that has the $50 a pack goes, hey, I'll give you my guy's number. Now that person getting the larger sum has no idea it's only $50 a month. And they're not going to tell them. They're just happy they have a guy or a woman, of course. But they're going to pass on that number. It makes them feel good. And now you get the referral. I'm telling you, it's happened many, many times for folks in our organization because we do the right thing. That, to me, that's because our model is superior. Does that make sense? Yeah. When I was in the business for probably 7 or 8 years, 6, 7, 8 years, in that range, I had a record income month. I made $65,000. And for somebody that has no college degree, no prior experience when I started, and no money, that'll make you ask yourself, how did that happen? Okay? So I was thinking about that. And that month, about $15,000 of that income was money that I made with my own pen, so to speak, and about $50,000 was overrides. And I seriously asked myself, how did we do this? How is this possible? Because it's certainly not all on me. And here's the conversation that I had with myself, and I'll now have it with you. So in my town, there's about 400,000 people. It's a pretty decent-sized town, Syracuse, New York. And so there's enough financial professionals there. There's plenty. And I was thinking, are there any financial professionals in Syracuse that have a better education than me? What do you think? Yes. Well, since I failed out, I would hope so. And then I was saying to myself, well, is there anybody, any of the other financial professionals that are in the area, are they more intelligent than me? Is there any of them that are more intelligent than me? Did you just say hell yes? No, okay. The answer is definitely yes. Of course, of course. And how about this? Are there any financial professionals in that area that have more experience? Yes. That were doing it longer? Of course. But how many of them made $65,000 that month? Do you think? I'd say maybe a few, certainly. But I guarantee you they've been in the business, they've been in the industry for a long time. Right? And God only knows what they had to do. Okay? The reason why I made $65,000 that month is because, number one, we have a superior model. It afforded me that chance to do it. And number two, I realized this. When we decided to get good at investments, we mastered the right thing. Do you know that knowing what to do with someone's money is 20% of it? And knowing how to communicate and talk about it is 80%. And we set out to master the communication of the securities business, and that's what I'm going to teach you today. What we do on the communication side. Knowing what to do with someone's money doesn't change that much, other than the tax laws change a bit from time to time and the contribution limits change. But once you know how a Roth IRA works, you know how a Roth IRA works. Once you know how to construct a portfolio and put it together and tap your resources, which we'll talk about a little bit, but once you know that, it doesn't really change. The key is taking complex and boring concepts and making them simple and interesting. That is the key to the investment business, in my opinion. So one other thing. The other contributing factor to us being able to earn that kind of income in 1 month, in addition to our superior model and mastering the communication, is that we taught other people, which of course is really part of both, right? It lends itself to both. And we were able to do that. So before I go into the conversation and how we do things and talk to clients to be able to do this, let me just give you the elements of a securities and building culture. How about that? How about having a culture in your office with your team that is securities and building, not one or the other? Because didn't I just say a little while ago we don't have to choose? We can have both? Okay, so here's the first one. Getting fully licensed is normal. I think we should stop treating it like some kind of unbelievable achievement. Recognize it? Absolutely. Absolutely. It is an achievement. Less than 1% of the U.S. population has a license to move money. But if we treat it like it's this big, rare thing, then that's what it's going to become. But in a securities and building culture, it would be perfectly normal for districts to be fully licensed. Not that we become professional studiers. Listen, I got my license as I was moving forward and recruiting and building and doing kitchen tables and using my life license. I was getting my securities license. You have to be in forward motion. But shouldn't that be normal? To get fully licensed quickly? I think so. Secondly, bringing in your trainer to finish the job is normal. See, I think anything else is selfish. And I'm going to be very direct here. And this is how I talk to the folks when they join our team. I think if you have a life license and you're getting active and you come across investments, it would be incredibly selfish to try and wait 4 or 5 months till you get your securities license to help that client. Because the way I see it, if we don't help them, someone's going to take advantage of them. And if we have the power to do it, we should do it. You know, when I was getting field trained, my trainer did $2.5 million in investment business while I was getting my license with the folks that I brought him to. And the truth is, I was happy about that. I wanted them to get the help, and I wanted the education. So what do you think that yielded me when I got my license? Do you think I needed him anymore? Or that I saw everything I needed to see with all those transactions? Absolutely. The other thing that it yielded me, because of the law of sowing and reaping that we can't get around, is a ton of referrals. You know, when I took him to about 30 very good quality appointments, and he did a lot of business and helped those people, they gave us referrals. Well, I had a folder with 96 referrals waiting for me to call them. And now I did know what I was doing. And I could talk with confidence because of what I observed. Listen, you can only reap what you sow. I didn't make that law up. We can't circumvent it. It's the way it works. If you don't like it, when you get your own planet, you can set it up different. But that's the way it works. So think about this now. You can't plant peanuts and reap pineapples. So if you're selfish in this process, you're not going to get good things coming back your way. So I figured if I planted, you know, not holding back in this stage of the game, right? Think about what it's yielded. Well, 140 million in AUM right now, 14 years later. A whole organization of people that can do it. People that come in and will gladly take me to their friends and family to help them and put them first, and then they get the education, and they get the right to expect that going forward. Does this make any sense? I think it's a key part of a securities and building culture. Getting help and splitting sales is normal. Again, guys, half of something is better than all of nothing. So, and now I'm talking about not necessarily with an upline, but with a colleague. So what I see happen in my organization quite often is, let's say somebody's direct to me, and they're out there doing the business, and they come across a securities transaction that they haven't come across before. And let's say I was out of town or wasn't available or something. They'll get with someone else in the base shop who will go and help them do that business and split sale it. Because it's, again, better to help the client and get half of something than not know what we're doing and go out there and lose the whole thing. So that's a normal way of doing business in this kind of culture. And then lastly, you know, getting really good is normal. How quick can you get good? You know, everything's easy once we know how. Right? So the key is how fast can we get good? I'm hoping that this training, that this broadcast, that this effort here will help us get good quicker as a company. I'm hoping that that's what it'll achieve. That's why I'm here. I know that's why you're here. I know that's why you're watching. You know, I sat with a family probably, again, 5, 6 years ago. I think it was 2005. And this story that I'm about to tell you illustrates everything I've already talked about. How our model is superior and how we have superior integrity and this field training process and the elements of the securities and building culture I've already mentioned. So check this out. We had a gentleman join our team, and he was in his early 40s, brand new, not even licensed yet, and we took him to a big event, all right, one of our leadership development schools. A key piece of our environment in Primerica that doesn't exist really in the rest of the industry. Okay, keep that in mind. So a gentleman had recruited him, and this gentleman's name was Chuck. And Chuck was a retired doctor. He owned a veterinary practice, sold it, was looking for something to do, and he joined our team. So Chuck was a great guy, extremely well respected in his community. So he invites this other guy to this meeting. We'll call him George. So Chuck and George go to this big event. And during the event, someone's on stage and they're illustrating and teaching how universal life really works. Okay? And George says, hey, man, I'm not sure, but I think my father has that. We should see him when we get home. And we said, okay, fine. So Chuck was a district. He was fully licensed, but hadn't done a lot of business yet. So he wanted me to come along. So Chuck and I went to see George's dad. Everybody with me? And come to find out, as we sat there and asked some questions and began to have the same conversation I'm going to go through with you in a little bit, we found out that 20 years earlier, his dad had sold a business that he'd poured his life into. And the proceeds was $500,000. And he took it to a large brokerage firm and said, I need to preserve this for the rest of our lives. We've got good income, we don't really need it, but I want it to be there. And they took the $500,000 and put the whole thing into a universal life policy. Front-loaded it. Can you imagine the commission on that? So this gentleman didn't have any idea that he had a massive millions of dollars worth of face amount of universal life insurance. He thought he had a legitimate investment. However, you know how universal life works. It builds up inside there on paper and gets to a high point, usually illustrated with a bell curve, and then all of a sudden, because the premiums are rising inside the policy without the consumer usually knowing, it begins to eat itself, and it's designed to implode at the end. No more coverage, no more money. Okay? Well, his father was 79 and a half years old. Sharp enough to see what was starting to happen. It was beginning to drop at $60,000 a quarter. How expensive is $5 million of life insurance for a 79-and-a-half-year-old?
Very expensive.
And we were able to have a simple conversation and communicate to them, him and his wife, what was happening and why. And most importantly, how to fix it. And we were able to do what's called the 1035 exchange, of course, the best way to move that money, and preserve 1.7, 1.8 million between there of that family fortune, and fix that just in the nick of time before he turned 80. Wouldn't have been able to do it that way if he had turned 80. And he has since passed, just this year, but there's $2.5 million, because we invested it very conservatively, of that family's fortune that is still there for the family. All right, now think about this for a minute. If we didn't have the Primerica model, the big events, the recruiting, the field training, the getting licensed part-time, all the things that make us so great, and if I didn't know what I was doing, put the time in to learn how to master the 20% of what to do and the 80% of the communication, maybe we wouldn't have been able to help this family. This was a big deal. Okay? So this is why we're here today to talk about these things. All right, so let me ask you this. What if bringing 3 simple, duplicatable things together could yield solid results in the field for you and your team? Would you want to know what they were? Yes. 3 simple things that we'll talk about, and we'll bring them together, and we're going to work hard on this, okay, for the rest of our time together. You ready to work hard on it? Yes. Okay. Here's what they are. Oh, and by the way, you can practice them and master them in a few hours. If you were really serious about moving your securities production and your numbers and your income between now and the end of the year, you would go home and practice these and have them mastered by the end of the week. And I promise you, you can do that if you put the time in. Here's what they are. The conversation, which is professional communication. The second thing is 5 fundamentals that will guide you so you know what to do when you look at people's assets, when you look at the money they have. There's 5 fundamentals that will guide you every time. They will not fail you. And then thirdly, tapping your resources. I think we have access to amazing resources that David Siegel and his team have brought in painstakingly over the years, and I just think that they're underutilized. That's been my observation. And so to show these guys what we appreciate, how much we appreciate what they've done, we in the field have to master the part that we have to master. They get us what we need. We master the communication and this process I'm going to go with you and taking full advantage of what's put on the table. Right? Fair enough? All right, so let's start with the conversation. Let me define for you, first and foremost, what I think a professional conversation is. And this is what I do at the kitchen table. It's simply a well-organized series of questions, listening and responding. The goal is to have a conversation with an agenda. Our goal is not to drone on and talk to people in a way that they don't understand. It's to have a conversation with an agenda, and what that consists of is a well-organized series of questions, listening and responding. That's how we win confidence. Let me ask you guys this. Is anybody going to do business with you if they don't have confidence in you? No. And your abilities? No, they're not. Especially when we're talking about 6-figure transactions potentially. So here's what the initial conversation is, the way I look at it. Again, this is kind of a macro view, an overview. It's all about learning about the people we're talking to and what they want. It's not about telling them everything I know. It's not about telling them what they have to do. It's about learning about them and what they want. That's an entirely different feeling for somebody who's been pitched a bunch of items, a bunch of products. It's building trust. It's teaching fundamental time-tested principles. And it's getting commitments. So listen, if your goal when you went to the kitchen table was simply that, it's not that difficult, is it? You could do that. Think about it. If you have the mindset going in, here's what I want to do at the kitchen table today. I want to learn about them and what they want. I want to teach them some fundamental time-tested principles. I want to build their trust, and I want to get some commitments so that I know my work is not going to be in vain. That right there is us being a professional. Now let me just say this. The second conversation, so let's assume that that's going to happen, guys, when you're first sitting with people and you're collecting information, okay? Before you do an F&A, before you make any kind of recommendations, that's the goal. Everybody with me? Yes. All right. Going back, our second conversation is reconnecting and reestablishing the objectives. I believe that that's very important. We don't go back so excited to show them everything that we forget to reconnect and reestablish the objectives. How many of you have been on a second appointment and the objectives have changed a little from the first one? Well, if we don't reestablish those, that could cost us that client. Laying out a strategy and a solution, and then clearly stating the steps to complete it. So look at, if we want to go and meet somebody, whatever presentation you want to take with you, that's fine. But above that, more importantly than that, bigger than that, bigger than the charts and the graphs and the brochures, is this. You with me? Yes. Learning about people and what they want, teaching fundamental time-tested principles, and there's resources you can use to help you teach those, but also building trust and getting commitments. Then we go back, we reconnect, we reestablish the objectives, we lay out the strategy and the solutions, and we clearly state and share and state the steps to complete it. Let me give you an analogy. when it comes to the presentation that you might like to use, again, there's fantastic things available. Here's how I view any presentation. How many of you have ever taught a little kid to swim? Okay? And so you know what I'm talking about when I say they had to use floaties, the bright yellow inflatable things. Now let me ask you this. What is the purpose of the floaties? Is it to teach them to swim? It's to keep them alive. Well, someone who knows how to swim transfers that information and that knowledge until they can practice swimming and get good. Am I right? So what if they learn to swim and now they're entering a competitive swimming race and they have their floaties on? Will it help or hinder? Oh, it's a big hindrance. Okay. What if Michael Phelps got up and had floaties? I don't care how good he is, that's going to hinder him. It's going to put drag in the water, right? Well, I believe that presentations are great. However, at some point in time, we have to get to a point where we own this information. Because the reality is, if you sit with somebody that has life savings and you read off of a sheet, I'm not sure they're going to do business with you. So use them when it's appropriate, of course. But I think the goal, as a massive force of securities licensed people, one of the largest in the industry, what we should do is get really good and own this stuff and be able to have a conversation. Make sense? Yes. Okay. Let's go into the fundamental principles. I'm going to give you 5 fundamentals. Now, here's what I observe happen all around the country. People will do a great job getting themselves to the kitchen table. And there's a challenge sometimes. There's work and effort required and belief and everything. And some emotion goes into that. So they get themselves to the kitchen table. And then they do a great job helping people implement the foundation to the financial house. They do the great job with the term insurance. But they leave the investments alone. Why do you think that happens? Nervous? People are nervous?
They're not licensed.
Possibly if they're not licensed. Let's say they're licensed, then they leave them alone. Listen, if they're not licensed, then they leave them alone. It's a culture issue. Because what should they do? Get somebody right back in there quick, right? But let's say they're licensed, then they leave them alone, which also happens. Lack of confidence, absolutely. They don't know what they're looking at. Could that be part of it? If you bring me your car and say, look, my car's making a funky noise. Can you take a look at it? So I say, sure, and I pop the hood. My advice is going to be, well, you probably should put some washer fluid in it. Because that's the only thing I know how to do. I can get gas and put washer fluid in it. All right? You take that car to a master mechanic, and that master mechanic can say, oh, let's do this, and here, I'll get you right back on the road. Because the master mechanic knows what he's looking at. It's that simple. Now, could I learn? Yes. If a master mechanic taught me? Yes. Of course I could. The difference here now is I can pick up a statement in the process of collecting someone's information to do an F&A or to talk with them, and I can look at their investment statement, and in a matter of seconds, maybe minutes, I know what's under the hood. Because I've seen it before, and I've put my time in, and I have a method. I have fundamentals in my mind that I run what I see against. Therefore, I know if it's broken. You know how if you take your car in, they might hook it up to some type of machine, and it runs these diagnostics, and you can say what's wrong? Well, look it. I know when the check engine light's on. Because I have fundamentals in my mind. And that's what I'm going to give you right now. So here they are. Number 1 is people don't need products, they need a strategy. This is profound. It's a profound statement to make to a client who's been sold a bunch of random financial products. and it's not working for them. They've lost money. The money hasn't grown. They don't know how things work. Haven't you sat with people that own a whole bunch of random financial products? How does it sound to them if I say, hey, one of my fundamentals, before we even get started, it's just to let you know up front, that I don't believe that people need financial products. What they need is a strategy, and the products are only there to fill in and support an overall strategy. The second fundamental is that there's three things to protect your hard-earned money against: taxation, inflation, and market fluctuation. I say it the same way, in the same order, every time. Think about that now. Mr. and Mrs. Client, I know you've worked hard for your money. And the truth is, I don't care how they got it. It could be an inheritance. It could be a settlement. It could be money they've saved over the years. What are the three things that could take that money from them and peck away at it the most? Taxation, inflation, and market fluctuation. All right? The third fundamental is that when we take a strategy and we use a strategy to protect your money against these three things, we're going to structure it into three accounts. And I believe that these are the three accounts that everybody should have: short-term, mid-term, and long-term. That's pretty simple, right? Okay? The fourth fundamental: you must know why we move money. Now, I'm going to give you the reasons why we move money, but I want you to know that this is a case-by-case basis, obviously, based on what's right for the client. I want you to know this: we don't move money just to move it. We never move money just to generate a commission for ourselves. Very, very important. This is a case-by-case basis. But here are the reasons why we legitimately move people's money. One, because it's in the wrong vehicle. What does that mean? Very simple. It means it's exposed to one, two, or the three things that I said that could take their money. If it's exposed to those, it's in the wrong vehicle. Because why keep it there if we can move it in and protect it against those things? Let me give you an example. Let's say you sit with someone, they've got $50,000 in a CD. Is that CD protected against taxation? No. Is it protected against inflation? No. Is it protected against market fluctuation? It is. It is. So how simple would this be? Mr. and Mrs. Client, I see you have the $50,000 in a CD. Tell me about it. Why'd you put it there? How'd you get it? Well, there's three things that we really need to protect this money against: taxation, inflation, and market fluctuation. And I see here that you're exposed to two out of the three. If I could show you a way to be protected against all three, would that be something you'd want to take a close look at? Is that a conversation you could have at the kitchen table? The second reason why we move money, we're on the fourth fundamental, but we're talking about the reasons why we move money. The second one is there's no strategy. So one is the wrong vehicle, two is no strategy. How many people do you think really have an overall strategy? Not many. What do they have? A few financial products. Boy, can we separate ourselves in the marketplace at the kitchen table if we master this stuff. And I believe that we can. The third reason why we move money is the fees are too high. You ever come across somebody with a financial product where the fees don't justify the returns? Of course we do. Number 4 is poor performance. That's the fourth reason why we might move money. And number 5 is poor service. Do you think anyone has all those reasons going on? Sure they do. What an improvement we can make if we know what we're doing. Now that's it. How simple are those fundamentals as far as knowing when to move money? Now you know what to look for. Now you know what's under the hood. And there's one more fundamental, the fifth one. We must play offense and defense. We must play offense and defense. Now let me explain this to you. What chance do we have of winning a game if we only play offense? Not a very good one. What if we only play defense and we never try to score? We're not going to win, right? So we have to play both. The same thing holds true with our portfolio, with our money, with our investments. Why is this so important? It's so important because money takes twice as long to come back as it does to go down. Money takes twice as long to come back as it does to go down. Let me illustrate. If I have an account with $100,000 in it, and I get a negative 50% rate of return, how much do I have? 50 grand. What a lot of people would simply say is, okay, let me be optimistic. Next year, I'll make the market will come back, my account will come back, I'll make a positive 50% rate of return and make my money back. Is that how it works? How much do we have? 75,000. I can't tell you how many clients, when I have this conversation with them and I ask them this, they think they're going to have their money back. It's the same way of thinking when we illustrate the rule of 72 and we say if we take our rate from 3 to 6%, what happens to our bottom line amount? And they all say it doubles. Because it's not that logical. It takes a little bit more. It takes a little knowledge. You got to think this through. So here's the point. It takes multiple good years to make up for one bad year in our accounts, in our portfolio. So what if we could tell clients that they don't have to take as much risk, that they shouldn't, that they have to have defensive positions in their portfolios? How does that sound to them? Do you think people are going to their homes and having this conversation with people from other companies? No, they're not. This will separate us. This is all about them, having confidence and liking us and trusting us. Okay? It's a different conversation. Along with that point of money takes twice as long to come back as it does to go down, let me take that a little deeper for you and point this out. Most portfolios that I've seen, and this is a range of dollar amounts, 10 grand to several hundred, set up by other brokers and different people in the financial industry, most of them simply follow the market. When you boil it all down, most of them follow the market. So if the market's up 20%, their account's up 20%. The market drops 20%, their account drops 20%. I call that a swing in a portfolio. The wider the swings, the worse the performance because of the principle we just outlined. We have to play offense and defense, and money takes twice as long to come back as it does to go down. So what if you knew how to design a portfolio that when the market went up 20, it didn't go up 20, but maybe it went up 15. You know I'm speaking conceptually. But when the market dropped 20, maybe it dropped 5. What would that difference be compounded out over a 15 or 20-year period for that client? Major, major mathematical difference. So I'm going to tell you how we can work towards being able to do that and the resources we have access to and how we do that. So let's run through this where we are right now, just to make sure we're all on the same page on how this conversation might sound. Are you starting to pick up on what we're doing here? So let's run through it and see how it sounds. So you sit with a client and you say, so, as you're transitioning to the financial topics and the reason why you're there, what if you said something like, Let me just tell you a couple of my fundamentals before I even look at your stuff. Let me just tell you a couple of things that I've built my business on, the way I do business, how I handle things. Let me share some of these fundamentals with you. I just want you to know that I believe people don't need financial products. They need a strategy. And I believe you've worked hard for your money. And I think there's three things that are trying to get it. And we need to use this strategy to protect our money against these three things. And those three things are taxation, inflation, market fluctuation. That's right. And I might clarify and say taxation, of course we know what that is. Inflation, we've got to beat the inflation rate. And of course market fluctuation, you know, the ups and downs of the economy. Might clarify that depending who I'm speaking with. So then I would say, so I have access to some fundamental strategies that I use to protect your money against these three things. And I'm going to structure this solution for you into three accounts. And those three accounts are short-term, mid-term, and long-term. Okay? And before I look at what you have, I just want you to know I don't believe in moving money just to move it. There has to be a benefit to you. And I have criteria that I'm going to reference your accounts against, some fundamentals. And if we feel we need to make a change, then I'll recommend it. Otherwise, I'm going to tell you to stay right where you are. How is that client feeling at this point? Very good. How long have I just talked to him? This couple minutes. How are they feeling compared to who else they may have sat with or sold them what they have? We're starting to draw this separation. I call it the value gap. Okay? Then I'll say, here's a couple of my principles that I'm talking about. We have to play offense and defense with our money. And the reason for that is because money takes... That's right. And could you explain the swings in a portfolio to them? Okay, yes you could. Sounds like you guys know what you're doing. Let me explain another principle that I teach at the kitchen table sometimes. I only do it when I have to take it up a notch, like when I'm sitting with an engineer. Because since engineers know everything already, I have to do something about the value gap. And I'll talk about a principle, concept, called beta. Now, a beta is a fancy word for measure of risk. And the overall market has a beta of 1. And every mutual fund, and typically every stock, is also assigned a beta. So the beta of the mutual fund and the stocks is relative to the beta of the market. Pretty simple, right? So let's say the market has a return, the S&P has a return of 8% during a certain period of time. Looking back in history, a definitive period of time, call it 10 years, whatever, it has a return of 8%. And it has a beta of 1. So what if I could talk to people about the risk they're taking relative to the market or relative to the investments they already have? What if I could simply, in a matter of a few minutes, analyze a portfolio or have it analyzed for me, even better? It's not bad to know how to do it, but if you're busy and building and doing things, maybe you just have it done for you. And I could say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, you know, I've analyzed your portfolio. And during this 10-year period, you've earned 7%. Not bad. And your beta is 1.2. In other words, your measure of risk to get that 7% is 1.2. That means you took 20% more risk than the overall market. Make sense? What I've prepared for you is a portfolio that plays offense and defense. And during the same period of time, historically, it's earned the same 7%, but the beta is 0.80. So how much less risk did that portfolio take to get that same return? It took 20% less risk than the market, 40% less risk than what you had done over the past 10 years. Is that money going to be difficult to move? Not at all. See, this is what we can do. This is what we have access to. This is what I'm going to show you how to do. See, if we're competing against anyone whose objective is simply to sell a product and make a commission, we should beat them every time. We should not lose to greedy people or people that have it, that don't have the client's best interest at heart, right? I think it's unacceptable that we would lose in those situations. Make sense? Makes sense. Okay. Let's review. Just want to review the fundamental principles. I told you there'd be a test. The first fundamental principle that we have to... Now, you're not going to read them off of here. What kind of test is that? Jeez. That sounds like continuing education. All right. So the first fundamental principle is people don't need products, they need a strategy. 3 things to protect our money against. Taxation, inflation, market fluctuation. Okay, this one's okay. 3 accounts everybody should have. Short-term, mid-term, long-term. Okay, this one's tougher. 5 reasons why we move money. The first one is it's in the wrong. No, right? No strategy. Fees are too high. Poor performance. Poor service. And the 5th fundamental principle is we've got to have. That's it. How simple is this to master? Couldn't you master this in a couple hours if you had someone else in your office that was serious about moving their securities business by several $100,000 a year, and you role-played this out, you got together? Don't you think you could do it? I do. All right, next section. Let's talk about tapping our resources. An amazing resource that we have access to that I believe is underutilized is our internal and external wholesalers with the fund companies that we do business with. How about this for a method of doing business? This is something I'm throwing out there that you can do that maybe you're unaware of. Let's say you sit with a client. You got yourself to the kitchen table. You have this kind of conversation we just went through. How many of you, by a show of hands, feel you could have that conversation if you practiced a little bit? Okay, very good. And we have all different types of people here with all different types of markets and experience levels, and you all believe now that you could have that kind of conversation. Raise your hand again if you think it would show value to the client and they would like you and trust you. Okay, very good. So let's say you do that and you collect information and you're doing an F&A or taking that back to analyze it, and you have an investment statement in front of you. Now you know about the conversation, you know about the 5 fundamentals. You can reference them. Even if you have the 5 fundamentals written on a piece of paper, you can look and say, oh, you know what, I think the fees are too high. I'm not 100% sure, but it looks like these guys are paying too much in fees. And it certainly looks like they don't have a strategy overall here. They've got a bunch of products. And man, I wonder what the swings have been in the portfolio. All right, I'm not saying at this point in time you have to become Albert Einstein and know how to do all that. Here's what I am saying. Remember, we're talking about building and securities culture. Here's what you can do. Develop a relationship with an internal wholesaler at a fund company that you like. Doesn't matter which company you want to use. They're all great. Call them up. Call him or her up. Talk to her. Say, hey, I've got a portfolio. I've got a client. I want to work out something great. And simply fax it in. They will take that and run a hypothetical illustration that very clearly will show you the best and worst 1-year, 3-year, 10-year periods of the portfolio. It'll show you those swings I was talking about. It will show you the beta of the existing assets that they have. So if their beta is 1.3, what does that tell you? 30%. They took 30% more risk than the overall market. And then you can get them on the phone and say, hey, look, I really want to get their beta down to 0.9 with a similar return. And the truth is, most people out there would take 1% less return to lower their risk because they've had about enough. That's where we're at most of the time. And they'll create that, work with you, and give it back to you. And you can take it to the client. See, to me, that's an unbelievable resource. And here, if you want to take it a step further, here's what you can do. They will teach you. Do you know how much I've learned from being on the phone for a few minutes with these folks? Because I'll ask them, I'll say, well, build a portfolio for me. And we're responsible for suitability. We have to ask the questions and all. But if we tell them what we're looking for, they are experts with the funds. So let's say they build the portfolio, and it's got 6 funds in it. And we're happy with the historical performance and the historical beta. It's no promise of what's going forward, but we can look back and see. Now I can ask them questions and say, hey, why did you choose this fund? Tell me about it. And they tell, well, I chose this fund because of this, 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 and this. I go, oh, okay. So now when I'm talking to the client, we say, we chose this fund because of this, this, and this. The client says, damn, you're smart. Right? That's the process. That's an unbelievable thing. And you know, if you're an RVP and you develop relationships, we're in a relationship business. These folks want our business. They want to help us. Every internal wholesaler wants to become an external. So they're working hard to impress their boss and to do a great job, and so they want to get a promotion. So what I do is when they do a great job for me and they give me what I want, and I'm not demanding. I don't want to be that way. I don't want to ever be rude or demanding, but I tell them what I need, and we work together, and I thank them for it, and they thank me for the business and all that. Well, then I'll make sure their boss knows what a great job they do. And we develop strong relationships. Okay? If you're an RVP and you want the externals that travel around to come out to your office, they'll come out and provide training and help you, and you just get the knowledge base wider and deeper and bigger. Next thing you know, we're dropping in key statistics about this stuff right off the top of our head into these conversations. How great is that for the client? Okay? Morningstar is another unbelievable resource. The process that I just described, that if you have a good relationship with an internal wholesaler that they might do for you, of course we can do ourselves with Morningstar. Depends on how much you want to get into it, how much time you spend, and both ways are fantastic. You can generate the same report that they're sending over. Make sense? Okay. A few miscellaneous tips as we start to wind down here. My advice is when this deals with when we find ourselves in a competitive situation with another financial professional. I want to give you some tips that have worked well for us over the years to come out on top here, to get the win. One is, if we're going to be in a competitive situation, we ought to know it. We ought to know it. See, it's amateur hour if we go in naive and tell everything, spill our candy in the lobby, tell everything that we know, and then walk out, give all of our recommendations, and we never knew they were going to compare with 2 or 3 people. We need to know that up front. And the way that I like to ask that is I say, so who else are you working with on this? And I want to know how serious they are of working with me, and I'll say, well, I just need to know how hard you want me to work on this. If you just want some ideas, that's one thing, but if we're committed to working together, I'm going to dive right in and dig deep on this and come back with something that's going to be fantastic. I just need to know that we're committed. See, a professional has the right to get commitments up front. Our time is incredibly valuable. Very few people have put in the time and effort and energy that you have to get your licenses. And now to study this or whatever you're going to do out there, you deserve to get commitments. And I'm not talking about pressure. I'm not talking about a hard sell by any stretch. You can see by everything I've gone through, there's no hard sell in this at all. It's the opposite, right or wrong. But I think we should get commitments. I don't believe we should do someone else's work. And I have no problem looking a client in the eye and telling them, hey, look, if you want to get multiple opinions, I respect that. Here's what I would like you to do. Go ahead and gather them. And when you've got everything, I'll be happy to come back and look through them with you and share with you what I have. And I believe if they get other opinions, it's just going to show how good I am. And you have to believe that about yourself. But I'm not going to do someone else's work and give it to them so they can go back and say, oh, I can do that. Because my question always is, then why didn't you? You get one chance to do the right thing for people, in my opinion. And we don't have anything to worry about because we're going to do that right up front the first time every time. Okay? Here's another tip. And it's the concept that half is better than none. It's not the same thing I was talking about earlier with split sailing. This is entirely different. A few times I've got to the point in dealing with a client where it was down to me and someone else. And the client was having a legitimately difficult time deciding who to work with. Okay? So I proposed, why not work with both of us? I'll take half. This other gentleman or this other woman will take half. And you can have the benefit of two professionals. I sat with a gentleman who had $400,000. And he was sick and tired of people trying to take advantage of him. He did not have a good experience with the previous company that he was with. And I came in and had these conversations that I've gone through with you, and it was very refreshing to him. He did like me. He trusted me. I had a great proposal. He was wrestling with working with me or doing it himself. He was an engineer. He was smart. He thought, maybe I can just handle it. And we went back and forth for 6 months. Never was I pushy, never was he rude. It was an open conversation. But here's what got me back in the door. I said to him, hey, I have a great idea. You want to handle this yourself. You've got some ideas on how you feel you can grow your money. I said, that's got to have an emotional reward to it if you achieve that. I said, you know the proposal that I've talked to you about, the strategy that I have to protect the money is good. You know it's good. I said, why not you work with half and we'll put half in the PE4, which is what I was talking to him about. And he said, this was a conversation on the phone after 6 months of following up about every month. He said, okay, that sounds like a great idea. Come and see me. Had I not thrown that out, I would have not got back in the door. I went and saw him, sat down with him at his office, and I had everything here, in front, and he said, I've been thinking. Can I just put all of it in the PE4? Can I just put all of it with you in the annuity? He said, I don't have time to mess with it. And I said, I haven't filled the amount out, but if you want to go back on our arrangement, then no problem, But the point is, by just being in tune with that and being able to throw that out there, again, as a professional, it could be the difference. And I take half. And then I'll just outperform and outservice the other people and get the rest later. Okay? All right, the next tip that I have for you is how to handle large sums. Let's say somebody gets an inheritance, multiple six figures, or they win a settlement. They get a lawsuit settlement. And they're getting a large sum of money all at once. Maybe it's a lottery winner that they've never really handled a large sum of money before. Okay? I'm going to take an entirely different approach than just about anybody else out there. What do you think the most common mistake would be for a financial person to come in once they have an appointment with somebody who just received or is about to receive a large sum of money?
Not giving them some money to play with.
I think you're correct, and I think it's going in, guns blazing, with this big idea of how to invest it all. I'm not going to take that approach at all. I am going to simply sit down, get to know the folks, and I'm going to say, what do you want to buy? What do you want to buy? And then I'm going to help them buy what they want in the wisest way possible. Because the reality is we all want to buy something. Okay, I've got a little bit of money, and if you gave me $1 million tomorrow, I'm buying something. I'm not investing 100% of it, and I'm going to invest a lot of it, and I'm going to handle it well. Okay, but everybody has this. So instead of it being this kind of scenario, you're coming alongside them and walking with the people. Let Let me tell you a story. I sat with a client after doing a seminar, workshop at their church. And this family was a total classic middle-class American family, great people. She worked at the church part-time, administratively, and the husband was a teacher. And his father passed away, and he received a large inheritance. He received $800,000 plus a property that was worth $750,000 that was almost about to be closed on and sold, and half of that was coming to him, half was going to his sister. So $800,000 in IRA money and $375,000, right? Middle class family working hard. They had no debt on their existing home. They had no mortgage. They weren't going to go crazy. So he'd received the first portion before I met him. And the broker that he was working with had managed to get the $800,000 down to $400,000. He had invested it in 4 individual stocks. 4 stocks, all startups. 2 of the companies were gone. WorldCom was one. So the very first thing I did is I had the conversation that I've just gone through with you. And how do you think they felt when I told them we could stop the bleeding and get into a much more defensive position and preserve the remaining $400,000? Unbelievable. The next thing that came up as I was talking to them, I said, what do you want? They said, look, we want a lake house. We've got our eye on this lake house. This broker for the previous few years had been telling them, no, you can't get it, you can't get it, you can't get it, you don't have the money, it's a bad purchase. And I said, well, why do you want the lake house? Oh, we want it when our kids, have kids. We want the grandkids to be there. We want it to be in the family. And they said, well, we're going to get this $375,000. We've got another 100 in CDs that we've saved over the years, which that's what they thought that they should do. We're going to just pay cash for the lake house and be done. We've lost so much money over here. We're just going to buy this lake house for $400,000. I said, okay. Let me ask you a couple questions. I said, if you pay cash for the lake house, in 30 years, what will you have? And they said, a paid-for lake house. I said, that's correct. In 30 years, will there be taxes on the property? And they said, yeah, it's $12,000, so it's probably going to be more than that by then. And I said, will there be maintenance on the property? Upkeep. And they said, well, of course. And I said, all right, so if your kids or your grandkids inherit this, and they don't have the money for the taxes or the maintenance, what's going to happen to the lake house? It's going to have to be sold. So what about this idea? What if we took enough money, got rid of the CDs, got this other $375,000, combined it all. What if we took enough to put down on the lake house? Enough to put down to avoid PMI. And you take a mortgage. Right. You don't have any debt. It'd be a comfortable situation. We take the $400,000 and we put it over here in an account with tax-free municipal bond funds. Tax-free munis, exempt from federal and state tax. In New York, there's a New York tax-free. Some states have them, some don't. And that account, by nature, is conservative. It's tax-exempt. The capital gains are exempt from tax, and they pay dividends every month. And it's accessible. It's not tied up. And we use the tax-free income from the account to pay the mortgage payment. And in 30 years, what will we have? A paid-for lake house and whatever principal is there, which should be the majority of it. And we use the tax-free income and we achieve the same thing. And now what if there's taxes and maintenance? You can set it up legally where that money only goes for that. And you've got a lake house in the family for generations. See, our job is to help people get what they want the wisest way possible. Who taught me how to teach them that? Well, look, it's Primerica. It goes back to the same thing I started with. Our model is superior. In this particular example, I knew what I was doing a whole lot more than that broker did. Because I learned it here, and I was able to have simple conversations, put people at ease, and get help from our resources, that I tapped our resources, and I was able to do that. There's still clients to this day The mortgage payment's been being paid every single month, and it's worked out fantastic. Okay, last point. I want to ask you as we go forward and we leave here how you're going to work on this. See, the question is really, what are we thinking about? Because when they asked Michael Jordan, when you get the game-winning shot, the ball goes to you and it's for the game-winning shot, aren't you nervous? And what was his answer? His answer was, no, because I've already been in that situation so many times in my mind. And you realize that that success principle, that achievement and victory principle, we can implement here with getting good at helping people with their money? What are we thinking about? And I found myself over the years, as I'd be driving, whatever, thinking about all these different scenarios. If this client had 100 grand, if this client had 250, if this client had this or that, how would I handle it? How would I handle the conversation? How would I structure the money in the short-term, mid-term, and long-term accounts? How would I protect it against taxation, inflation, and market fluctuation? And I'd run through it, almost role-playing in my own mind how to handle this. So when I got to the kitchen table, I'd been through it a million times in my own head. You can do that. You can foster an environment, a building and securities culture in your office where part of your training, yes, train like crazy on recruiting and getting people off to a fast start, of course. And train on the fundamentals of life insurance and how to fix that stuff. But my goodness, let's implement 30 minutes every Saturday on securities and having these conversations if this is the way you choose to go to boost your securities business. Does that make sense? Yes. I think we should always get started right away. I think we learn by doing. I think getting out there and getting this going is the way to do it. And I think if we practice the verbiage and the conversation on the smaller trades, it's no different on the bigger ones. And when they come along, smooth sailing. You'll make way more money in the smaller amount of time. You know, it's unbelievable how it works. I would say renew your license. And I'm saying that to everybody out there. Please don't make the mistake of letting your license go. You worked so hard to get it. It's a tragedy when people let their license go and then 3 weeks later they hear about someone that needs a rollover. If you're part-time and you love your career or whatever, that's great. Listen, having a securities license is such an edge. There'd be no logical reason to let that go. Yes, there's a small renewal fee. Go out and set up some packs. You know, just get something going. Do 1 or 2 transactions. Keep the license. You never know when it's going to come in handy. Open a Roth for somebody. It's so simple to do. Now you know how to have these conversations. You build on this training from here. Like I told you, we're coming out with the complete builder's guide to securities. Everything's going to be in there. All the different things, managed accounts, PE4, portfolio design, municipal bond funds, and it's all going to be modules. So you could pick one out and play it for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 40 minutes, however long it is, and zero in on that area. And after 6 months, your team's going to be amazing at this stuff. This is not difficult. My final thought is this. America needs us. Our families, our friends, the hardworking folks out there, co-workers, whatever, they need to know that we know what we're doing. Right or wrong? That's key. Nobody else can do the work that we do. I believe that 100%. And you guys are so important. You are so important. And it's time to step up and get the job done. And you have what it takes. God bless you guys. Woo.